Hey guys, Roxabox90 here with a deconstruction of Quad9s's EDH Sedris the Traitor King deck. This deck is pretty much based around unearthing big creatures, controlling the board as much as you can, and kind of just winning via beatdown and overwhelming power, which pretty much makes sense to me. So Sedris is a very popular general. He's quite good. Obviously, you want to try to abuse him because he makes all your big creatures, your big fatties that either are killed slash put in the graveyard, suddenly become playable for 3. And if you have a way to keep them around, or a way to end the turn before you have to exile them, then it's even better. And his deck does that to some extent. Sedris himself is a powerhouse. He's a 5/5 for 6, and he kind of makes the deck run with the Unearth. So let's take a look at the deck. So lands, he has Badlands, and that's, I believe, his only duel. Totally fine. Obviously, you run whatever duels you can. They're some of the best lands. He's got a Watery Grave. It's a shock. Darkslick Shores, as I always say, Scar's duels aren't that great because they're almost always going to hit play tapped. So not recommended necessarily. Drowned Catacomb is phenomenal. Sulphur Falls, of course, and Dragon Skull Summit. He's got the 3 core set lands. Creeping Tar Pit kills Planeswalkers, as I learned from Mr. Lubifu's deck, so nice choice. Lovecore Reaches, though, doesn't, so I'm not a fan that it hits play tapped, even though it's a dual color. You can either run a shock in place of this. I think Blood Crypt is the shock, or I would run a basic, and I'll get to the basics when I get to them. I have some thoughts about them. Then you got the 3 bounce lands. They're good stand-ins for budget, although I don't think you want to end up keeping them if you have a larger budget, because they force you to lose a land. So even though they give you 2, they're more vulnerable to being destroyed, and they're much more damaging if they are, and they force a land back, so not the biggest fan. You got 2 fetches, although this Grixis only searches for a basic, so it's okay. Although I would run more of the regular fetches. Obviously budget, but just saying. Urborg is phenomenal if you have it. It makes all your lands tap for swamp as well, which is why he has fewer swamps. Makes sense. Shizo is great because it potentially makes not only Sedris unblockable, but it makes other huge fatties of his unblockable, since he has a number of legendaries in here. Talaria West is really in here, I think, for the transmute. Groundyard is fine. I like that you can mill yourself, especially with top, if you know that your top 3 cards have creatures. I think it's a pretty cool option. Mystifying Maze. Maze of Ith is a better choice, but it's fine. Desolate Lighthouse. It's great in this deck because you can dump fatties, so that's a good choice. Bajiju is good. He has a number of big spells, so it makes sense that he would use Bajiju, and that's a workable card. Wasteland, Tech Edge are both here. Obviously, I would run instead, if you have a Wasteland, great. I would run Strip Mine, it's just cheaper. And Ghost Quarter is another good option instead of Tech Edge if you need, but they're both fine. You want to run some land destruction, that's definitely a good choice here. Ancient Tomb is a good ramp. Command Tower. Necropolis hits play tapped, but it can tap for any of the 3, so it's an okay tap land. Like if you have to have a land hit play tapped, that's a pretty good one. Rupture Spire, it does tap for any, but I hate that it comes into play tapped and you have to. It's pretty heavy penalty for what it does. I would pull that out, especially I'd put a basic. Oh, you do have Strip Mine. Okay, so good for you. I don't know if you need 3 land destruction, but I think that's fine. Basics, I do not like that you run so few basics. Personally, I'm in favor of running more basics because you are much more threatened by cards that damage non-basics, and of which there are many. Just Blood Moon is off the top of my head, would just level your deck this way since you have so few basics. I would probably run, if you could, at least 3 of each, although I'd probably run, to be honest, given what how your deck is distributed, I'd probably run 4 or 5 islands and 4 or 5 mountains and maybe 1 more swamp. It's probably how I would distribute your lands. Of course, if you have more shocks or duels, that's also a good stand-in. Let's go to the Planeswalkers. We have Karn Liberated, who's powerhouse of a card. He's just a good card. Liliana, I believe he has Temporal Mastery, and I think he wants Bonfire, so Liliana is a Vampiric Tutor on a stick, and it's target player discard, so you can make yourself discard. I think that's great. -8 is pretty never going to happen, but if it does happen, your deck is a pretty powerful graveyard-oriented focus. That's a good pick. Bolas is, of course, phenomenal. He's just, in general, a good Planeswalker if you have the colors to run him. There's really nothing bad about him. Good choice. Jace, I guess you want Jace for your deck because I honestly don't think he's the best Planeswalker to run, but he's a fine card, without a doubt. Enchantments, we have Animate Dead, which makes sense. It pulls creatures from the graveyard, and Unfulfilled Desires, which it's so you can draw cards and discard cards on whim, and with cards like Top in your deck, I think it's a really good choice. As you said, it's kind of out of nowhere, but it's a fantastic card. Artifacts. So we have Divining Top, Soul Ring, Lightning Greaves, all basic stuff. Sundial, which is a crux in this deck because it's a super powerful card with Sedris, since it lets you keep your unearthed creatures at the end of turn, which I think is just excellent. Now you're running Signets and Obelisk. Okay, Signet's a bit messy. I don't know if you need the Signet. It's okay. It's a fine ramp forward card. I just don't know if you need it. It's probably fine. Monolith, unless you're running rings or some other combo, I don't think you have rings in here. Rings of Brightheart. So I would not run the Monolith. Obelisk, kind of the same thing as Signet. It's an okay ramp. I don't know if you need it. Coalition Relic is a better ramp card. I think this is probably a better choice than Obelisk. Gem of Becoming is great, especially because it searches for shocks and duels when and if you have them. Gilded Lotus, given how many 3-ofs you have a lot of 3-ofs, it's probably a good choice. Spells, Ancestral Vision, I don't like that you have to wait for it for the suspend. I would probably put in a more immediate draw spell just instead of it. Even though it's nice, yeah, you could drop it. You could drop it turn 1, and then 4 turns later you draw 3. I don't think it's necessary. I think you should just run a better card. Like there's a card, Recurring Insight, I just was recommended for my deck, and I think it's really good. Preordain and Ponder and the like, I would only run if your deck's seriously 1v1. Otherwise, I think it's a pretty weak card for EDH. I think it's a bit small. Entomb is great, I think, because it can put stuff that's not just creatures. It can put any card. So I think that's a fine choice. Reanimate in this sort of deck is great, especially if you can dump a creature early. Faithless Looting, it's a nice draw and has the flashback. Otherwise, I would say pull it out, but I think with the flashback, it makes its value worthwhile. Exhume is fine in 1v1. I think you run a pretty big risk if you do it later game because most of your opponents will have something awesome as well. So I would run something more just for you. Beacon of Unrest, I don't see in your list. You might want to consider that or some variant of that instead. Tutor, it's great. Terminate, makes sense. There's another card I think called Wrecking Ball, I think, which destroys a creature or land for 4. So that's a pretty good variant of this. Counterspell, it's great. Careful Consideration is pretty good. I like it, especially that you can discard. Rite of Replication is always good. Cryptic Command, fantastic. Living Death is great in this deck. So good. Increasing Ambition is a nice tutor. There's also, I think, Demonic Collusion it's called, where the buyback is you discard 2 cards, and in this deck that might be pretty good. It's also a 5-cost tutor for 1, but you can buy it back. So I'm not sure if it's better than Increasing Ambition, but it's a pretty good choice. Temporal Mastery, already said, is good with the Vampiric Tutor element of Liliana. You might want to have an actual Vampiric Tutor in here as well if you have one to make this even better. But then it makes it really good. Otherwise, Time Warp is just a better card. Cruel Ultimatum is great. It's always good. Black Sun Zenith is good wrath. Devil's Play I know is supposed to be Bonfire, but Bonfire is like crazy. So I just want to let you know that I do have 2 Bonfires. So if you are looking for one for this deck or in general, you can feel free to check it back with me. Intermediate. Blue Sun is nice. You might want, I think it's, I forget the name. There's a card, it's a blue card. It's 2 and a blue and X that does the same thing as Blue Sun, except it doesn't shuffle. It's that you draw X cards. So that may be Burst of Knowledge, something like that. That may be a better, because it's not 3 blue, which is pretty hefty, but if you find it works for you, it works for you. Factor Fiction is great. And in fact, you probably want Sphinx. Oh, there you go, Sphinx Smoothing. Good. Let's go through the creatures. Snapcaster Mage, of course, in this deck is phenomenal, especially with something like Entomb. You put a spell that you want to Snapcaster back into the graveyard. It's good. Image is fantastic also, especially with the Unearth ability. Nightscape Familiar. I think it's okay. Vendilion Clique, it's just always good. Grixis Battlemage has the ability on the stick. I think it's a good utility. Doom Necromancer is pretty insane. Pretty insane. Especially with Unearth. He's just crazy. Coffin Queen is great. I think it's pretty good. Shadowmage Infiltrator is cool. I don't think you need it. To be honest, I think it's a bit weak in EDH. It doesn't have haste on its own. And yeah, it can be a card a turn, but to be honest, I don't think it's that great. I think you could pick something better. Balthor is crazy in this deck. Glenelendra is always good. Flametongue Kavu is kind of the same thing. It's good in other formats. I don't think it's as good here. It's nice it can blow up a general, but to be honest, you can put better cards. Anger is good. Lich is good. This is really nice in this sort of deck because it lets you respond. You can pick Eldrazi, which is pretty nice. Or I guess you can do Balthor also. That's a pretty good choice. Muldrifter is fine. Zealous Conscripts and Kiki-Jiki are best buddies. I like that little combo thing you have going on. Urabrask gives the haste. Flayer is really good with the Undying, especially because it does crazy damage when you bring things back, when you have things die and then unearth, and it's crazy. He's really good. Titan's always good, although I think he's a weaker Titan. If you're going to have a Titan, I'm pretty sure he can get a better creature. Vizara is nice. It's legendary variant and destroy target creature on a stick is pretty good. Shieldred, though, is obviously just better. Balefire, it's even better with haste. Yeah, I think it's pretty good. Another card you might want to consider is Dragon Tyrant in your sort of deck, because if you can unearth him, even if he'll die, then you unearth him, and a die and unearth him. He's a 6/6 double strike, trample. He's just so powerful. You might want to consider running him in this deck. Runescarred is a good choice. Sphinx, good choice. Bogard and Hellkite, it's nice that hits play off of flash and can do crazy damage. And that you can recur him over and over is pretty awesome. Nicol Bolas, kind of the same thing. He might die, but then they potentially lose their hand if he has haste. So he's pretty awesome. And Ulamog. Yeah, so that's pretty much the deck that he has going on over here. So some of the things I would change maybe is some more basics. Maybe try to work on the land base a bit. Obviously budget I know is in the way, but that's something to do. I mentioned some of the other things to do as well. I'm going to do what I did with one of the other decks I broke down, where I just wanted to show you and everyone else that this is the Commander Decklist database on MTG Salvation. It's under the forums, under the Commander. They have lots of decks, but this forum, these are primers for all colors. And you can pretty much find whatever you need. So for example, if we were going to find some examples of Sedris, here's a huge list. Not all the decks are great, but at the very least you can browse them and figure out, like, this is good, I kind of like this card, I never heard of that. Like, all sorts of reactions and all different cards. And I think that if you're looking for examples, this is a great place to look. So just a quick smattering of things I opened up. So this guy's deck is a different style, but here's a card that I didn't think would be so good, but in your deck, I think it's crazy. Whenever it or another permanent is put into a graveyard, you draw a card. It persists, and whenever a spell is played, unearth, then you draw a card. It's a crazy draw engine for your deck. So that's a great card to know about. And then of course you have his list. Then you have another list. Actually, this one I didn't like so much. But here with Sundial, you have all these other cards that work with Sundial, which, such as something to notice that you might not have used. Treacherous Urge is crazy because you get it until end of turn, but if you use Sundial, then you get to keep the creature that you stole from their hand. Craziness. Sneak Attack. Think about how good this card is. Choose a card from your hand and put it into play. And then you get to keep it with Sundial. So that's crazy. Obviously, the price tag's a bit insane, but you have all these other options that are crazy. Even things I've seen lots of decks that do this sort of thing. where you have Final Fortune, and there's a couple of variants of this card that you would lose the game in a turn, but if you are focused on using Sundial and Unearth, then these sort of cards are just things to consider. They're pretty good. Slave of Bolas, another great example. Think about how great this card is if you can prevent the sacrifice. Then you get to keep it. Crazy. So that's all. Those are great. So where is the thing? Okay. So anyway, overall, I think the deck looks pretty solid. I'm not so sure about your overarching mana curve. Obviously, you play with it yourself and you'll see how it works out because it seems a bit kind of all over the place. I think you're doing a pretty good job with not having everything you need at once. You have some good options that are kind of filling space, such as bounce lands. But I think overall, if you can smooth out your base, your mana base a little more, hopefully with some, obviously budget is a problem, as I say over and over again. But if you can fit in more shocks, that would definitely help. Filter lands, you have none of them here. I know they're expensive, they're quote unquote expensive, but they're actually pretty cheap overall, and I think you definitely want to run them. They're from Eventide, I believe. So you could definitely run things like Graven Cairns and the other two, the bigger colors. So I would definitely do that if you can. In terms of everything else, you seem to have a pretty good build going. It seems like you know what you want to do and it's working. I made some examples and some choices, but overall I think the deck is pretty solid, and I gave some further examples and place to look if you want to kind of take your time and go through and maybe find some other good cards that you haven't thought about. Overall, good deck, good job. Thanks so much for sharing with me. I hope everyone else watching this finds it really good. Sedris is very popular, so I hope this video helps many other people as well. And yeah, that's what I got to say. So thanks for watching, guys. Thank you, Quad9s, and Roxbox90 signing out.